Welcome to Battleground Politics. I'm Lauren Mayk. As former President Donald Trump's first criminal trial gets underway in New York, I'm talking to two people who have some unique insight into the process and even into the very courtroom itself. William J. Brennan and Michael Veen represented a Trump company in a trial in New York, picking jurors in Manhattan, appearing in front of the same judge who is handling the hush money case going on now. These attorneys also represented Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial. More on that later, but first, our conversation about the trial in New York. Welcome to Battleground Politics, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
William J. Brennan, Michael Veen, appreciate your time and interested to get your perspective on what has been happening in New York. You guys have a really unique perspective, having represented both the former president before, back when we're talking about during his impeachment trial, but also representing a company with the Trump name on it, which was in New York with the same judge, also picking a jury, which we're seeing happening right now. First of all, Bill, as you watch this case play out in New York and get started, what are your thoughts just watching this?
I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but as you say, Mike and I have the unique experience of having been in that same courtroom with that same judge. So when I do see a television on and there's a news clip and I see that room, you get a little deja vu. It's interesting to see the former president at the very table where we sat, and then to see the artist renderings of Judge Merchan. So. Well, maybe flashbacks, maybe.
Well, it's interesting for us, the kind of the specter of DJT and his the way he's able to really fill a room isn't so much to us anymore. We know him, we've represented him for a couple of years, and we know him. For me, when I see it on TV or I see the pictures, oh, there's the sheriff that we know, there's the bailiff that we know.
Yeah, Jack.
And so, everything that's familiar to that courthouse and that courtroom, we spent, I think, 6 weeks in it, in the trial that
Lauren,
we did.
I'll say this to you. We're like a traveling vaudeville act. We take the act down to D.C., we take it to New York, we take it to other states. But as far as how, I'm not making a political statement, I'm talking about the case or the parties, but as far as how we were treated up there, I mean, just fabulously well. The judge is a gentleman. The court staff was wonderful. The sheriffs, the guy walking in the metal detector in the morning, the guy we got the law dictionary. Just nice place to try a case.
In your case, just to bring people up to speed, you represented the Trump Payroll Corporation.
We did. Right when he left the White House, an investigation began. Through first the Southern District of New York and then the Manhattan DA's office for record keeping for the Trump Organization. And so there were two entities that were charged, the Trump Organization and the Trump Payroll Corporation. There were a team of 4 lawyers. We took the Payroll Corporation, they took the organization, and the indictment was in New York, and that's where the case was tried. And it's not just the same judge; it's the same. And kind of to my point was, it's the same courtroom. There's really nothing different going. It's the same witnesses almost, many of the same witnesses. So and unfortunately, it's the same jury pool, and
it was involving business records, record keeping. Ultimately,
that's the statute.
The Payroll Corporation and the Trump Corporation were convicted. I have to check my notes. Convicted of conspiracy, criminal tax fraud, and falsifying business records. Yes. Was the result of that case.
$800,000 in fines.
Okay. So, as they are going through this process of picking a jury, what was it like as you picked a jury?
Well, I did a lot of the questioning of what's called voir dire. It's a phrase that means to speak the truth. And the idea is both sides want to do all that they can to assure themselves that the 12 people who are eventually seated will give the defendant and the other side a fair shake. So you have hundreds of prospective jurors, and then it's kind of like the brackets in March Madness. You know, those who check off boxes that they can't be fair, maybe they make it to a questioning round that's apart from the other jurors, or maybe they just get cut. But after the initial cut, there's a subset of prospective jurors who go in the back to the jury room, a room much like this, and sit with the judge and the prosecution team and the defense team, and we get to ask them questions individually, and then there's another cut after that.
And this was a pool of Manhattan jurors, potential jurors only. That's the only thing that they are pulling from. In this case, that's the only thing that they were pulling from.
Well,
in that
that's
case.
a good point you make, Lauren, because a lot of people, a lot of lawyers, I don't know that we knew it. I mean, we're kind of carpetbaggers from Philly, but a lot of lawyers and people in the press who have interviewed Mike and myself don't realize, you know, when you think of New York City, you think of the 5 boroughs, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, and Manhattan. When the Manhattan DA's office brings criminal charges, you only get prospective jurors from the island of Manhattan, and that's a kind of a tough crowd for these particular cases.
In this case, they have a jury questionnaire that includes questions about, have you ever been to a Trump rally? Have you ever volunteered for an anti-Trump organization? You know, how do you feel about how the former president's being treated? Did you have that kind of questionnaire as well?
Yeah, in fact, the jury questionnaire they're using now is really just our jury questionnaire was the foundation of that. I think we had about 300 questions. They have about 500 questions now. Some got added, some got subtracted, but it's the same. It's all the same questions. We had those questions in ours, and the questions are designed to get people that are impartial, that aren't leaning way one, you know, predisposed to convict them or predisposed not to convict them. You're just trying to get people that aren't inherently biased for one reason or another. That's the purpose of the questionnaire. You know, we knew that the jury pool was going to be a problem. And so we had mock jury trials. We had mock juries where we were able to present the case to them and then watch them deliberate about the case and then actually individually interview them about the evidence that they heard, the witnesses that they heard from, and what their opinions were on that, so that we could kind of get an understanding of what the jurors in Manhattan were thinking and how we wanted to shape our arguments and what type of jurors we wanted to pick.
What was the biggest challenge in terms of going through and picking a jury? Was it just finding people who said they could be impartial, given the fact that it tangentially involved something related to the former president, his businesses?
Yes, I think that's a succinct statement of what the biggest challenge was. But what's interesting is that those that were obvious, and they would be the people that checked off in our questionnaire, questions 29 and 30 were, 29 was, do you have any strong feelings about the former president? And 30 was, if you do, would it affect your ability to be fair? So the people that checked those off would make it to round 2, and we had one lady.
They'd come in the back.
They would come in the back, where, you know, a room like this, and we had one lady who was of Irish descent. She worked in an Irish pub. She was in her mid-40s. She was like in a denim outfit, and I've been picking juries, and Mike has been picking juries for 30 years, or longer. And you know, you kind of think you know maybe who you have a shot with, and I thought she was terrific. But she had checked off 29 and 30, so I said to her, ma'am, I said, those feelings, would they be positive feelings or negative feelings? She says, oh, I despise that man. And it was late in the day, and I was tired, and I said, hey, don't sugarcoat anything for me. You know, you got something to say, speak your mind. She said, I speak my mind. I hate him. So I look at the judge, and I thought, you know, he would meet my glance and, you know, should go. And he went, wait a minute. And he's there, and, you know, he's in his robe, and he's running the show, and, you know, the majesty of the court. He said, ma'am, if I told you at the conclusion of the case before you deliberated what the law was and instructed you, could you put those feelings aside and be fair? And, you know, most people fold when the judge says that, and she said she could. Now, we got her out a different way, but she wasn't the troublesome juror. It's the juror who checks none of the boxes and has some ulterior motive, and we have to kind of mind read. You know, we had a couple that we just
They wanted to get on.
felt there's no way this individual doesn't have strong feelings. And you'd say, sir, there's nothing about the former president. No, I'm fine. I'm good. I can be fair. And you have to worry about that. I mean, how do you root them out? And it's like rows of shark's teeth. You get rid of one, there's another one right behind them. So
I would think
it's a tough
also
crowd.
prosecutions dealing with the same kind of questions, thinking, is there somebody, especially
Well,
in this case, is there somebody who's going to get on to block a guilty conviction?
But see, the thing in this case is 8.5 out of 10 people have very negative opinions about the former president.
From that pool.
So that the prosecutors...
In the Manhattan pool,
Sure.
that was yours.
So the prosecutors in Manhattan are quite happy with their jury pool, and really all they're looking for is to make sure the one that would maybe vote, be biased towards him doesn't make it on. They have a much easier task picking a jury up there. They have a much easier task picking a judge up there. Judge Mershon is a very good judge. He was a prosecutor for a long time in that office and was, very smart, very learned, very professional, very hardworking, very controlled in his approach to everything. He understood the battles we had, but we had the jury pool that we had. It was very difficult.
Bill, you described it in a certain way to me earlier.
I think I said it was like getting root canal without Novocaine. I mean, it was painful to sit for those days or weeks, and just person after person after person. You're taking your shots, and it's Teflon. It would be like, let's just move it hypothetically to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We have 67 counties. If the case was prosecuted in Philadelphia with the particular surname of this defendant, I think that the defense would have a hard time. You move it out to Schuylkill County, I think we're going to be in good shape. Then as Mike said, 8.5 out of 10 in favor of the prosecution shifts to us. Now we got 8.5, maybe 9 out of 10. So the venue means a lot. It really does.
And that this is in New York. That is a particular venue for Donald Trump. And Mike, you and I have talked about this, that it's not just politics. What did you see there in terms of his history in New York and how that impacts people as well?
Yeah, we did speak about it. Donald Trump is, born and raised Manhattan. He came out of the womb in Manhattan. He's well known. He has always sought publicity there. He has his family and then he himself are major developers in that city. And some people like what they do. But a lot of people don't like what they do. A lot of people don't like the development they've done. They don't like the way they've developed, and they've over decades upon decades have developed a poor opinion of him, and that makes it very difficult for him to get a fair jury.
Did you all learn anything about that was surprising to you in terms of how people view the former president? Anything about the way they view him or feel about him or react to him? Did you learn anything that was surprising to you?
The thing that surprised me the most, and this goes back to when Mike and I represented him in his second impeachment, was the level of vitriol from people that I'm related to, I think, or my friends, when we came back from doing our jobs in D.C. Some coward had, in the middle of the night, under cover of darkness, taken a spray can and wrote "traitor" on Mike's home. Mike had to have armed guards and police protect his family. It's a disgrace. I mean, it's such a misperception that because we represented the former president, that we buy into all this political nonsense. I mean, it's just, if the current president had a problem, we would consider his case. We are trial lawyers. We represent people charged with crimes. And Mike is more forgiving than I on this issue. And Mike took 90% of the heat because I kind of kept my fin under the water in D.C. But it amazes me that people, these social media warriors, from the anonymity of their keyboard, can just post after post after post, either pro-red or pro-blue, over somebody they're never going to meet, who really has no impact on their lives. I mean, go out and take a walk, buy a dog, volunteer at a soup kitchen, be a big brother. I mean, there's a big life out there outside this nonsense.
Did it make you think twice about taking this case that you did in New York? This was after the impeachment trial?
No, really, not at all. But, to answer your question, he's bigger than life. He is. I'm not sure I have spent time with anybody who is so polarizing. People really love him, or people really don't love him, and there's not much that's really in between the two. And I think a lot of that's due to his plain speak, the manner in which he presents an idea in a very clear, plain, if not sharp, position. I think there's a psychology to that gets people polarized to him. And in the context of his trial coming up, he's really going to have to figure out how to behave in that courtroom without alienating people aside from what the facts are. Or
violating something that the judge has said. If you were the attorney there right now, would you be worried about that?
I watched them up at Judge Egg's. We were also involved in the Attorney General's case in New York for a while, and in that trial, the judge gave him, for some reason, 10 minutes to do his own closing argument. And then he said, no, you can't. And then he gave him, I'll give you 5 minutes, but you can't talk about this, this, and this. And then I think for about 20 minutes, he just went on talking about everything he wasn't supposed to talk about.
I don't know the other judge. I've never been in his presence, but I saw him on TV. And just from what I saw on TV, comparing the way he ran that particular case to the way I know from 7 or 8 weeks of being in Judge Merchan's room, they're not even close. I mean, Judge Merchan runs a tight ship, and a very easy guy to appear in front of, because show up on time, know your stuff, hit your mark, know your line, have all your papers ready, and you got a real good judge there. Meet professionalism with professionalism. He was a pleasure to appear before.
And I had appeared in front of Enron in hearings, and they're different styles, but they're also different cases. That was a civil case being brought by the Attorney General's office. So, the litigants, the former president, his family, whoever, didn't need to appear every day in court. And it's just really becoming an issue. I'm hearing more last night and this morning. But yeah, every criminal defendant has to sit there and be tried. If they're not tried, I guess they'll try in absentia. But he's required to be there through the pendency of the trial, and he's going to get from Juan Merchan, he's going to get no special treatment. He's not going to get any special treatment one way or the other. I mean, the guy is really going to try to call balls and strikes down the middle, and let the justice work as it does. But because Trump is such a big guy, that courtroom isn't very big physically. There were only enough room for the prosecution table and the defense table, and then the jury box is there.
How big is it compared to where we are now?
Well, you remember, we had the judge's sheriff staff literally share. We were sharing the same table.
The room itself is large, but the room from the bar to the bench is not that big.
Okay.
The room itself is high ceilings and a lot of spectator seats, like benches, rows or pews, almost benches. But the room, we work beyond the rail, and that wasn't very big.
Given your experience, we're seeing reports of the former president conferring with his attorneys, of course, as he's sitting there, as this is getting underway. Given your experience, what would you expect his involvement will be in kind of directing how his defense
He's interactive,
goes?
and if you say anything that could be remotely conceived to be positive about him, you get emails and lunatics, but I don't care. He's an easy guy to get along with. He's sometimes a little too interactive, but I mean, we've had a lot of dealings with him, and no trouble.
He's going to be very involved in the defense of this
he's going to be
case.
hands-on.
He's not aloof. He's not going to be looking at this from 30,000 feet. He's going to be looking at jury questionnaires. He's going to be trying to read jurors himself. He's going to be trying to figure out how he wants witnesses approached. He's going to be involved. He's talking with those lawyers every day around the clock. He doesn't sleep much. And he's going to be very involved with them. And he's going to be asking a lot of questions of the lawyers, and he's going to be trying to give a lot of direction.
It's important too. We by and large, almost everywhere we practice, but we had for the most part a very good working relationship with the prosecution team. Well, I think it's all the same prosecutors. It got a little heated at the end, which it happens in all long trials. No matter how professional you are or how much you try to be cordial, 7-8 weeks battling it out and then you're closed. I mean, so maybe there's a bad day, 1 bad day, 2 bad days in 8 weeks. That's not a bad average. But we had a good relationship with the staff, we had a good relationship with the prosecutors, good relationship with the judge and his staff. I don't know Mr. Blanche, but I predict he'll have a similar experience. The difference being, though, we didn't have the former president with us at the table, and he is quite interactive.
If there is a disagreement over how to handle something, who wins?
Hopefully, well, it's got to be tough when you were once the most powerful man in the world to take advice from your doctor, your lawyer, whomever, but hopefully he listens to his lawyers. I mean, and our experience has been that there may be some give and take, but he will. And I suspect if it was the current president, who's been in public office for 50 years and is used to being catered to, I suspect he would. I mean, it's not because they're Republicans or Democrats. It's because they're big shots. It could be a CEO. It could be anybody. I can't imagine, though, that he won't, especially how serious all this is, that he won't just comport himself, in a manner that's acceptable to the court.
Well, in some decisions will be his alone. Whether he's going to testify or not in his own defense is strictly going to be his decision. And it is with every...
He has said that he will.
Yep, I understand. And that's true.
Do you think that's a good idea?
And that's true with every criminal defendant.
Do you think it's a good idea for him to testify?
I don't want to opine on this case. Hypothetically, I just tried a case last week, very, very serious criminal matter. And I told the defendant, we have prepped him, I said, this decision will be made at the absolute last possible second when everybody else has testified. The prosecution case is over, character's up, your other witnesses are up, and I'll go yes or no. And in that case, he opted not to, and it was the right decision. It was a not guilty. But you can't really make that. And the problem with saying that is, unless you're sure you're going to do it, if a lawyer or, in this case, a defendant promises you're going to hear from me, and then they don't hear from you, it's an issue. And, under the law, he has no obligation to testify.
You really have to see how the evidence comes in. You have to see whether he's going to be able to help himself or not. And that really depends upon what other witnesses, how they're handled. Before he has to make that decision. But it would be very lively testimony if he were to testify, though, I'm sure.
There's more to our conversation. In fact, so much more that we're breaking it up into 2 parts. In the second part, they take us behind the scenes in the impeachment trial. You can find that episode and more Battleground Politics on NBC10.com, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts.